Welcome to this episode of Let's Talk 716 Sports. My special guest is Michael Lisman, and we will be talking some Buffalo Sabres hockey.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot to talk about regarding the Sabres as of late with the new hirings of Don Granato. The Jack Eichel talks. There's a lot to definitely be talked about regarding the Sabres. A big offseason ahead of us for sure.
How do you think Don Granato did when he came in for Ralph Kruger?
Yeah, I think it's pretty hard to do worse than Rolf Kruger, right? I mean, Rolf Kruger was probably one of the worst hockey coaches that the Buffalo Sabres have had in their time being a franchise, and I think he was probably one of the worst hockey coaches in general to ever be an NHL hockey coach ever. But nevertheless, I think it's pretty hard to do worse than that. But Don Granato, I think he did more than just look good after Rolf Kruger. I think he brought out a different life from our younger guys, especially guys like Casey Middlestat. Rasmus Dahlin was finally able to play the game that he had been longing to play, and because Rolf Kruger was just stapling this defensive mindset into Rasmus Dahlin's head, and that's not the type of defenseman Rasmus Dahlin is. He has to be offensive in order to get the most out of him. And Don Granato came in and definitely made that happen. And I think Don Granato could really get the best out of anybody, including Tage Thompson. I mean, we saw Tage Thompson go from being the biggest laughingstock on the Buffalo Sabres to somebody that can actually use his size, somebody that knew how to use his reach and shoot the puck at the speed and the velocity he could. So I think Don Granato can get the most out of really anybody that's on his roster at the end of the day. And Rolf Kruger, hard to do worse than Rolf Kruger,
Yeah. Like, do you think that Jack Eichel's gonna stay, or do you think he's gonna get traded over the summer?
It's so hard. The general consensus from the bigger media guys, they're all saying he's going to get traded. All signs are pointing to him being departed. But I just can't help but just think to myself, this is so much harder than I feel like it's being made out to be. Everybody's acting like it's so easy just to ship out Jack Eichel, especially in the special scenario that he's in currently. I personally don't think he's going to get traded. I know people are going to raise their eyebrows at such a take, but just the circumstances in which it will take for him to be traded, the requirements that need to be met, I just think they're almost unrealistic at the end of the day. And apparently a lot of NHL teams, according to Elliot Friedman, agree with the Buffalo Sabres in terms of how they want a guy like Jack Eichel to handle a neck injury. And if a lot of teams are agreeing with the Sabres, then I would imagine that a lot of teams wouldn't want to be in the situation that the Sabres are in, especially when they would have to, give up a lot of capital to get such players. So I personally think he's not going. I really don't think he's going to be going anywhere. I think he will be a Sabre by next season. But with that being said, if he does get traded, I can't say I wasn't expecting it either. Just being a little more optimistic than what the general media is saying these days.
What do you think of Ristolainen and Reinhardt?
Ristolainen's a guy that we've all said should have been traded a while ago. Everybody talked about the just the fact that he just really is not the guy that should be here anymore. He's not a guy that is, going to be able to handle a number one, 30-minute defenseman type of role, somebody that could really be carrying the workload. And I understand that if he does get shipped out, he probably will be a lot better because he won't be relied on as that number one defenseman. As far as Sam Reinhart goes, it sucks that, of course, the year that it's make or break for him to be on the team is the year that he does very well. It's hard to imagine a scenario where Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart are either shipped out one at a time, or maybe a scenario where Jack Eichel's traded, but Sam Reinhart isn't. It's hard to imagine a scenario in which that happens, but you never really know. I'm not sure what Kevin Adams is thinking. I think I have a stronger opinion about what will happen about Jack Eichel than I do about Ristolainen or Reinhart. I would be surprised if Ristolainen is a Sabre by the end of the summer. Reinhart, I guess, will all be dependent on what happens with Jack, and I guess I could say the same for Jack having to do with Sam.
What do you think of the goaltending situation with the Sabres?
I think we were fortunate to figure out that Linus Ullmark could be a number one goaltender in this league. Obviously, the backup goaltender position is the big question mark for the Buffalo Sabres, as well as whether or not Ullmark will be returning. I think Ullmark will be returning, unless maybe he gets a big paycheck elsewhere, which is very possible. But I just have a feeling that he will end up being on the Sabres as well. I don't know, just something about this offseason. Everybody's acting like it's going to be a big turnaround and there's going to be a big turnover of a roster. I just have a feeling that it's really not going to be like that. It's all going to revolve around the expansion draft as well. Whoever we give up in the expansion draft will play a big factor in what happens with the rest of the guys on the roster. But I do think Linus Ullmark will stick around. What we do at the backup position is a whole other story. I don't think it's worth bringing UPL up just for the simple fact that I don't think bringing a guy into the situation that's so young will do anything for him. I mean, he ended up getting hurt for the short time he played up here. I mean, I guess it's silly to say, but, playing a guy like Michael Hauser and having him do so well, it makes you realize that, we don't necessarily have to go out and find somebody that's already proven. Giving somebody a chance that's in your system might end up working out at the end of the day. And I'm not sitting here saying Michael Hauser deserves the backup job permanently, but you never know what you have in your system. And I think it's worth giving everybody in your farm system, wherever they may be, whether they're on on Rochester, wherever they might be, giving everybody a chance, because you never know what you have in a guy.
Who do you think the Sabres will protect during the expansion draft?
Oh boy, you obviously have your given guys. Jeff Skinner's automatically protected. It's all kind of up in the air between Tage. Guys, we don't really know if Asplin's going to get protected. Beside for your givens, I think I would almost personally I think I might protect Tage, just for the simple fact that we saw some positive from Tage Thompson for once, and I think Tage Thompson, as poor as he's played as a Buffalo Sabre, he could bring some positivity. He was included in the original trade where we got him because he had some upside. The word upside is thrown around very lightly, especially in hockey. But a guy like Tage Thompson, he's got so much size, he's got such long reach. I think if he's put in the right hands, he could really be a dangerous forward, especially for a team that does not really have much else to offer. So I think Tage Thompson will be the guy that we end up protecting. I could be completely wrong. Maybe it is Asplund, maybe, who knows, somebody else. But I guess only time will tell, right?
Who do you think would play center, like second line center or first line center when the season starts this year?
I'm going off of how I feel about the whole Jack Eichel situation. I think Jack would be our first line center. And then, assuming everything goes the way it should, if Jack Eichel's still here, I'm under the assumption Sam Reinhart is also still here. With that being said, Sam would be our second line center. And, for us if we dare put him back on the wing, death to us all, because that would be miserable. We finally figured out that, as all the fans already knew, this kid could play center. Sam Reinhart is a center at heart, and he really thrived when he was at that position. So I think at the end of the day, that's where he belongs, and that's where, if he's still on the team, he will be. As far, obviously, we got Dylan Cousins as well. It's so hard to predict a roster with all the different things that could happen at this point. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Jack, with Sam, even Ristolainen on the back end. It's just so hard to tell, to predict what our roster is going to look like because of what has to happen going into next season.
How do you think Victor Olofsson did this past season?
He's the power play guy. I think he's worth having on your roster as long as Jack Eichel's there. He's not really, obviously, as we have seen, he's not one to produce very much when Jack Eichel is not playing. But I don't think that's really a knock on him. Everybody is going to do better when you have a guy like Jack Eichel around. But I think if Jack Eichel's on your roster, it's worth keeping Olofsson on your roster as well because of how lethal he is on the power play. But otherwise, he obviously wasn't too spectacular. He wasn't scoring at the rate he was, especially when Jack was around, and that's kind of tough to see. And he really lingered on that first line for a long time, and he kind of just eventually started to bounce back and forth. And we never really got the production out of him that we were all kind of hoping. But that's fine. If Jack is still around, he's going to go back to that production that I believe everybody can see him being. So I think Victor Olofsson had a decent season. Could have been better, but obviously the Jack Eichel injury and the whole situation has not helped his chances.
Do you think that Jeff Skinner will be back to his normal self this season?
I don't think it's hard to say. I don't think he's ever going to return to that season where obviously when he got paid. I don't think we're ever going to get that production out of him again. It really makes you scratch your head why he was put on and buried on the fourth line. And granted, he really didn't do all that bad at the start of the season, at least when he was buried down there. But obviously, he was just nowhere near the production that he was producing at. And that's fine. I don't think we really, obviously, you would like to expect him to be producing at that level, especially for the amount of money he's getting paid. But after what we've seen, I think it's almost just unrealistic to expect that. I think that was just Jeff Skinner having his best season, and that was his peak, essentially, is what I'm saying. So we really probably can't expect that sort of season again. But we could, we should be expecting at least, I would say, a 20-goal season at the minimum, just based on how much we're paying him. You're getting paid that much money to go out there and to score goals, and I would hope Jeff Skinner is able to return to that. I think playing with Jack Eichel would certainly help that. I'm going to leave that all up to Don Granato, what he feels like is right. But obviously, Ralph Kruger did not have the formula to solve the Jeff Skinner puzzle because Jeff Skinner played horrible. He was not producing under Ralph Kruger, and everybody knows what happened between him and Ralph Kruger. Jeff Skinner was getting scratched, benched. Big drama that happened with Jeff Skinner and Ralph Kruger, but hopefully Don Granato was able to at least fix Jeff Skinner to what he used to be.
What do you think of with Gergensons and
just Gergensons?
Yeah.
I think Gergensons might be one of the guys that we do not protect. I hate to say it, but he wasn't around last season, and we're getting a new coach, and he really didn't get to experience much of the Ralph Kruger treatment or the Don Granato treatment for that matter. And I think with that being said, it would make it easier for the Sabres just to say, be on your way, just because he wasn't around for any of it. Which sucks because Gergensons has been here for a long time. He's kind of been almost a cornerstone of the miserable 10 years that we've been going through. Nevertheless, Gergensons, he's a good player, but nothing more than your typical maybe average second liner, good third liner at most or at best. But I do expect Gergensons to most likely be out the door.
Do you think the Sabres would keep Rasmus Asplund?
Like I mentioned earlier, I guess it all depends. I'm not sure how highly they view Tage Thompson. I think that's going to be the personal battle that they'll fight behind closed doors. Rasmus Asplund or Tage Thompson. Like I said, I think I'm taking Tage, to be quite honest, which might be a shock to hear, but I really do think I am. But you never know. I would not be upset if we kept Asplund instead. I would not be upset at all. And it's just so funny to me because I would rag on Tage Thompson more than anybody. I could not stand watching the dude play, but now I'm saying that I'd protect him, which is just, and I never thought I'd be saying that, but just the little we saw from him that was positive, it just makes me think the possibilities are endless for Tage. So therefore, I don't think Asplund, will be sticking around if that's what it comes down to between him or Tage.
Do you think that Jake McCabe would come back to Buffalo, or do you think he would be on his way out?
I think Jake McCabe is somebody we probably are expecting to be on his way out. At this point in time, I think out of the guys that might not be on the team next year, the guys that are question marks, I think Jake McCabe is probably at the top of the list of being on his way out. Nevertheless, it's just, once again, kind of hard to say. You don't know what these guys are thinking in the certain situations they're all in. They're all in unique situations individually, even though they're on the same team. And probably they're all thinking, I want to get the hell out of here. But at the same time, whatever happens when the season rolls around, their mind might be at a different place. So I think Jake McCabe, with that being said, will probably be a guy that we do see out the door. As far as other guys on the back end, like Ristolainen, it's hard. It's hard to tell right now.
Who do you think the Sabres will draft at number 1 this year? Or do you think they'll trade it?
They definitely won't trade the pick. I can't imagine. I don't think there's a single scenario in which I picture them trading the pick away. It seems like the consensus guy is obviously Owen Power. I don't hate that. I guess it all depends whether or not we trade Jack and what we get in return for him. I would assume we're getting probably a top 10 pick if we trade Jack at the very least. So I think we'll probably end up going with Owen Power because he's your safest bet. Nobody can really fault you for taking Owen Power. I think if you go with pretty much anybody else and it doesn't go right, I think, people can look at you and say, what were you doing? Why didn't you go with Power? Blah, blah, blah. But if you go with Power, you really can't. It's hard to be faulted at the end of the day because he is being considered the best guy in this draft. But I know Matty Beniers is a guy that everybody has been talking about. I heard the name Kent Johnson be tossed around. I'm not sure if he would go number 1. That would all depend on whether or not we get a first-round pick in return for whatever we trade Jack Eichel for. But yeah, I think I would probably go with a forward, specifically Beniers. But I do think the Sabres are going to end up with Owen Power.
If the Sabres end up with Owen Power, do you think he'll sign here, or do you think he'll stay in juniors?
He already came out and said that he is definitely going to be playing. No matter where he gets drafted to, he's going back to play for Michigan another year, which is good. We really, especially the Buffalo Sabres, we really don't need our young guys coming on the team and making an immediate impact at this very moment. We're not a team that really needs that. We're a team that needs to rebuild from the ground up. We're a team that needs to find our foundation again. And you don't need to bring a kid like that into the NHL for him to get exposed the way that a guy like Jamie Drysdale did over in Anaheim. He got thrown to the wolves, to put it perfectly honest. He really did. He got thrown on a team that was not doing too hot, and he was just kind of told, go do what you got to do out there, and he did. And it wasn't the prettiest thing, but at the same time, he's a young kid, right? Throwing him to the wolves in the NHL, it's probably not going to go well for most guys. And so with that being said, I think Owen Power, like he already came out and said, he will be playing another year at Michigan at the very least. So that's good. We all want him to go down there, enjoy his time there, really develop whatever he's got left, the time he's got left, so he can come up to the Sabres when he's ready, when he's developed, and really get a feel for it, instead of just getting thrown into the fire that is the Buffalo Sabres at this very moment.
Do you think that, with the new coach and the GM and, Jason Carmanos, do you think the Sabres are close to maybe making a playoff push?
I don't know. I thought we were going to be making a playoff push this past season with Taylor Hall on the roster and Jack Eichel being what we thought was healthy. I thought for sure this was going to be the year where we might be on the brink of the playoffs, where it's coming down to the 54th, 55th, maybe even the 56th game where we're fighting for that last playoff spot. But obviously that was not the case. This year, I definitely don't think will be the year we're making a playoff push. I think this will be the year that Donnie Granato really gets his feet wet, where Donnie Meatballs gets his feet wet, as he's being famously called. And this will be the year where we kind of find out what he really is about. We didn't really get the full Ralph Kruger experience when he took over at the back end of the 2019 season. And then at the 2020 season, we got to – oh, my camera's off. We got the full experience from Ralph Kruger. So why did that happen? There we go. we got the full Ralph Krueger experience in 2020 after getting the back end experience in 2019. So I think 2021 will be more like getting the feel for what Don Granato is actually bringing to the table, because we saw a good dose of him in the back end of 2020, but that wasn't a full season, a full off season to prepare. He didn't get to really prepare for the opportunity he got. So getting to see what Don Granato actually can bring to the table in a prepared off season with a set roster that he knows he's got. That I think that's what this season will be for more than anything. I don't think it'll be a playoff push by any means.
Do you have any questions?
Oh yeah, sure. What do you think? What kind of expectations do you have for the Sabres going to the season?
I think they could maybe make a 10-game run if they get the right players and like have the right person behind the bench, and hopefully they can just figure out a way to make it for meaningful games in March.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I hope to guide you right. I wouldn't be calling myself a Sabres fan if I wanted anything else to happen. But I also would be, I think, a little out of my mind to be sitting here and pounding the table for a playoff push this season. I think that's a little bit unrealistic. But nevertheless, I think I completely agree. I would love to see the team potentially make another 10-game run like that. This might catch a little. Why does that keep happening? This might catch some people off guard. What's going on with this? I think my camera's like dead. Yep. All right, hold on. I don't know what's going on. This was the issue I was having before I hopped in the chat. All right, there we go. Seriously? Yeah, I think my camera's dead or something. All right. Like I said, not expecting a playoff push this season, but hopefully, you never know what could happen. Hockey's hockey. Any team can be good at any time with any roster. A group of guys could just gel together at the right time, like the Montreal Canadiens, and make a push out of nowhere. So maybe that'll be the Sabres in 2021. But nevertheless, I would not be completely disappointed if we were just kind of getting our feet wet and figuring things out, especially if Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart, our key cornerstone players are out the door. We definitely will take at least a year to really find ourselves. So, not expecting the most, but expecting improvement this season for sure.
How's it going so far working under the Built-in Buffalo team?
Oh, it's pretty cool. Dave actually, when he asked me to join not too long ago, I was surprised. I was kind of taken aback. Like, I didn't realize, people were watching me to that level. I didn't know guys like Dave would be able to find me. It was just kind of like a surreal moment. But now that I've been in it for a little bit now, it's a great time. Dave, A Rich, they're all fantastic guys to me. Everybody else on the team, everybody on the podcast network, everybody that works on the YouTube channel, every single one of those guys are amazing. They support me. We all support each other on a very large level. And it's definitely something different. I've never worked on a creation team like this before, but I love every second of it. I'm so happy I joined when I did. It wasn't the easiest decision at the time, which you would think it would be, but it wasn't, but I'm so glad I did. And I would not change a thing.
If you had a favorite player on the Sabres, who would it be?
It's absolutely Jack Eichel. It absolutely has to be. I've talked about this before with a couple of my friends, but when I grew up, Ryan Miller was that player that I always looked up to, that I kind of idolized. And then once he departed, I was sad. I was growing up watching Ryan Miller in his best years with the Buffalo Sabres. Then when he left, I was kind of upset. And, my childhood at that point really wasn't over. So Jack Eichel came along in 2015, and that was kind of like, the new guy that was supposed to come here and really fix things around, which, I mean, he did his best to. It's not his fault things haven't gone favorable for the Sabres, but nevertheless, Jack Eichel is kind of the guy that I looked at and I attached myself to as a Sabres fan, hoping that he would be able to carry the load. And he did what he could. Ryan Miller did as much as he could as well when he was here. You could say it wasn't enough. You could say he wasn't good. Whatever you might have, whatever your opinion might be, Ryan Miller was stellar when he was here. Jack Eichel, for the time that he's played with the Sabres, he's been outstanding as well. So it would be Jack Eichel 10 times out of 10. And I really hope he doesn't get traded. I'm kind of just clinging on to hope as a Sabres and Eichel fan. But even if he does, I'll be a fan of Eichel no matter where he goes. As long as like some story doesn't come out after all of this is said and done and he proves to be like just some jerk for no reason, which is possible. You never know with athletes these days, but I highly doubt it. I think Jack's a great kid and he's by far my favorite Sabres player.
What is the name of your podcast that you do?
So I just run. I'm mainly I just work off of the platform of YouTube. I usually don't do podcasting too often, but my YouTube channel is called The Caveman, and I am a part of the Built-in Buffalo Content Creation Network. So I'm a YouTuber more than a podcaster at the end of the day, which is it's not really that much different, and we're all talking about sports nevertheless. But I am a YouTuber, go by the name of The Caveman. You can find me on YouTube. Simple search. I'm a part of Built-in Buffalo, like I said.
What sport do you mostly cover, like talk about?
I talk about football for the most part, especially when the season is in swing. But right now, hockey is everybody's talking about. Hockey's in season, so I do talk about hockey as well, but definitely more of a football-oriented channel when it comes down to it. But hockey definitely is sprinkled in there more often than not, I would say, compared to anything else.
How do you think the Canadiens will do against Tampa Bay? Do you think they'll win these next two, or do you think they'll end up getting swept in 4 games?
I don't think they'll get swept. I've been rooting for the Canadiens ever since they beat the Jets. I didn't fully believe in them when they went into the series against Winnipeg, but once they swept the Jets, I was a full believer, a full bandwagon rider. But I don't think they'll get swept. I think it was almost just an unfortunate way to lose in that game too. I don't think they really lost because they didn't play well enough. They lost just because they couldn't punch in their opportunities, and just one mistake at the end of the second period, I think, was the dagger. I think if Blake Coleman doesn't dive and put that puck past Carey Price with 0.3 seconds left, I do think the Canadiens win that game. But once that happened, I think that just kind of took the wind out of the Canadian sails a little bit, and the momentum was kind of killed. But before, up to that point, I mean, the Canadiens, it was their game, and it was really their game in the third period as well. They just couldn't put the puck past Andrei Vasilevsky, and once Joel Edmondson made that crucial mistake behind the net, that was it. But, they proved they can definitely keep up with the Lightning, and I think they'll at least steal a game at the very least. I think they'll win the series still. I think they could pull another rabbit out of a hat, but right now they definitely need to just focus on winning tonight at the very least.
In that game on Wednesday night, I think they were out shooting them too.
Yeah, they like I said, yeah, like you just said as well. They were out shooting them. They had more scoring opportunities. They were all over them. They were all over the Lightning in their offensive zone. But Andrei Vasilevsky is quite often touted as one of the best goalies in the world, and he showed off why. It's been the Carey Price show as far as goaltending goes for the last couple of weeks. But Andrei Vasilevsky showed that he can also play the game at a very high level. And I wouldn't say he showed up Carey Price because he really didn't, but he definitely was the reason why the Lightning won that game, hands down.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Let's Talk Someone Sick Sports. Thank you to my guest, Michael Lisman, and go Sabres.
Yes, sir. Go Buffalo.